Wealth is a mindset. If it was easy, everyone would be a billionaire. They aren't. In this house, we do the work and are wildly resourced as a result. Welcome to House of Wealth. It's time to actualize your destiny.
I'm gonna live in freedom. I'm gonna live my destiny. I'm gonna live my freedom. I'm gonna live, the time is right now.
Hey, and welcome to episode 1 of season 5 of House of Wealth. Wow. Oh my goodness. I have been excited to come and record this first episode of this new season for a couple of weeks, but I've really been in a place of trying to formulate even exactly what I want to share. The last 2 years of my life have been all the things. It has been a complete and total deconstruction. It has been the most amazing blessing. It has been one of the most challenging times of my life. It has been one of the most inspirational times of my life. It has been, literally just like all the things. And, clearly I have pulled back from podcasting as regularly over the last couple of years as I've been navigating like all my life changes and all my growth and all my transformation. And, when it comes to astrology, I guess the one thing that I'll say is just that these midlife transits are no joke and nobody gets out unscathed. So, I think for the purpose of today, I want to just pop in and I want to share a little bit about where I was and what I went through and where I am now, and really where I see the show going. I thought a lot about whether or not I wanted to rebrand House of Wealth because, I retired the Wealth Witch brand in the fall of 2022. And I rebranded the show from the Wealth Witch podcast to House of Wealth. And that rebrand of House of Wealth was so powerful. And I think at the time that that rebrand came through, I didn't even fully realize the depth and the gravity that that name was going to have in my life. Because my idea was that, wealth to me, it's always been more than financial in nature. And one of the things that I can tell you over the last year that has happened to me, and, over the last 2 years, but definitely over the last year that's happened to me, is that I no longer am invested in prioritizing financial wealth in my life. I am not in a place or space any longer that I'm chasing money. I believe that true wealth comes from all the other areas of our lives, and that those other areas are so much more important than our financial wealth. And when I had the idea of the House of Wealth, for me, what I saw was a foundation that we would lay to build a house upon, and that all the rooms of the house would represent the different areas of wealth that make up a whole or holistic human being. And I think that as I, started navigating that, and certainly as I started releasing episodes on the show, one of the things that I realized was that some of my rooms were completely empty in that house. And I had prioritized the growth of wealth in certain areas that actually didn't align with my personal values. And I had completely ignored the cultivation of wealth in certain areas that really did align with my personal values. And so I would say, if the last year has been anything, it has been a real come to Jesus in many ways, but a come to Jesus with myself about what my priorities are, what my values are, what actually makes me happy. And, I would say about summer of last year, 2023, I realized that nothing was making me happy. I was completely miserable. I was living a morally corrupt life. I was not prioritizing any of the things that actually mattered or made a difference in the world. That I had become so wrapped up in existing in a paradigm of greed and chase and manifestation and creation, but not a holy place. I'm not really quite sure how else to say that right now, but from an energy that wasn't an energy of goodness, if that makes sense. And that in the process of going through that and of making the millions of dollars that I made, I had lost myself. I had lost my spirit. I had lost the part of me that was the most important, the part of me that kept the checks and balances in place around morality and around values. And that was very confronting. It was a very, very confronting time. And I felt so incredibly alone. I felt so incredibly lost. And, there was a weekend in particular that I fell on my knees and prayed to God to show me where I had fallen off my path, where I had become so morally corrupt, where I had stopped prioritizing the things in my life that really, really mattered. And in that, I don't even think it was praying, it was more like begging. I begged to be shown the way back. I begged to be shown what the purpose of my life was and why I'm here. And I can honestly sit here today, coming up on a year later and say to you that I'm not clear on it. I am not 100% clear on what my purpose is on this planet. And that's something that I used to teach, like, you know, knowing your purpose and being driven. And, I would have told you that I absolutely knew why I was here on this planet to help deconstruct financial slavery consciousness, to help people, learn how to deconstruct their money shit, to help people, learn how to deconstruct all their programming and conditioning around money and lack and scarcity consciousness. And I was convicted in that. And I was certain in that. And, the people around me, my friends, my family, I was known for my certainty. And it's, it's a bit nerve wracking actually to be sitting here on my podcast and saying to you, like, I'm not certain. I don't know. I don't have all the answers. I'm actually not sure why God put me here on this planet. I don't know the calling that God has for my life. I don't know what I'm supposed to do next. But what I have discovered is an incredible amount of peace and contentment in a surrender to really cultivating and facilitating my relationship with God. And this is actually, for me, it's been a really interesting journey because of my study of astrology and how deeply I've dove into that study of astrology over the last, I would say, 4 years. The realization that we are in the middle of this Saturn in Pisces transit, which essentially to me is a calling home to God, it's not lost on me. And at the beginning of this transit, I saw a lot of people really dive deeply into a born again Christian path and renouncing, New Age spirituality and renouncing all of the work that they had been doing inside New Age spirituality, inside, in the online space in particular, because that's the world that I run in. And it was interesting from an observational perspective to know what was happening from an astrological perspective, to look back throughout history and see the other times that this has happened and how there's been this, calling home or yeah, I would call it essentially a calling home to God. Objectively, I was looking at all of that when this transit started, thinking, wow, like it's so different for every single person. That call home to God looks different for everyone. And that can be, incredibly fulfilling and rewarding and rejuvenating, or it can be quite fanatical. I knew that we would see an uptick in religious wars. I knew that we would see, people being willing to die by the sword for their faith, that I would see people being willing to kill for their faith. And it's been interesting because like over the last couple of weeks, I've actually really been diving deeply into the connections between astrology and Christianity. Because the Bible, talks about divination, any tool of divination, or any tool that is used to predict the future as being not of God, being of the devil. And I've really been interested in that because I have been walking my own path back to God. I've been walking my own path of rediscovery of what that connection is between me and my creator. And so I've been exploring lots of different avenues and, really trying to figure out how I feel about all of it. I would say that I certainly at the beginning of this Saturn and Pisces transit I felt it. I felt the call home. And I think in the beginning of that, I was really wary. I was wary of, was I just being influenced by a collective energy? What was this calling that I felt like I was feeling or that I was experiencing? And so I really just held off and I watched from an observational perspective. But it was very, very clear to me that I was receiving some kind of calling. I was being called back into a relationship with God. However, I am an avid student of astrology, and I am a person who, in my work, has used divination and used divination tools, the tarot specifically. And I think there was a big part of me that actually wasn't really willing to look at that. And so as a result, I actually put off or ignored this calling that I was feeling. And I was listening to a woman that I know in the online space that I really respect the other day. And it was so funny. She said, when Jesus enters the chat, you might as well surrender. And I kind of laughed because I thought, yeah, like I feel like what happens is you get the calling home to God. And if you ignore it, then your whole entire life falls apart. And, for me, I think that my life had to completely disintegrate to get my attention, to actually get me to be like, okay, what is this? Where am I? Am I happy? Are these ways of being working for me? My whole entire life have had a gift of being able to materialize resources. So some may call that manifestation, right? Or they may call it creation work, or they may say that I have the ability to, you know, create matter with will. I also clearly have been given a gift of helping people be able to deconstruct lack and scarcity consciousness and deprogram and decondition around money, wealth, and abundance. So these are gifts that were given to me by God, right? They're things that I believe are part of what I'm here to do. I think in the last year, one of the things that I realized was I've been using those gifts the wrong way. And that when we're creating or we're manifesting or we're materializing, bringing something into physicality from a place of selfishness and look, I'm doing this, I'm doing this, I'm doing this. What happens is we're holding all that energy, we're moving all of that energy, and it's a lot. And as a result of that, for me, certainly, I gained weight. My health rapidly declined. I became incredibly unhappy. I felt like I always needed to get to the next step, the next level. Like no amount of money was enough. Nothing that I manifested or created fulfilled me. And so I was seeking. And I've always been a seeker, right? I've always been a seeker of wisdom, of knowledge, of information. I always want to know all the things about all the things. Um, and it's no different now, by the way. Like all the things about all the things now just is about God and different religions and Christianity and Catholicism. And like now I'm just researching a whole other area and walk of life. And I'm really fascinated by human behavior and human behavior in relation to our creator. And that's probably the thing right now that like I'm diving the deepest into and that I'm really fascinated in exploring, including my own behavior when it comes to that relationship with God. So I ignored the call and then had to have the full like Mack truck, complete annihilation of my life in order to realize that I did actually desire more conscious connection with God, that I did want to be called home, that I did want to actually be able to know and understand and acknowledge the calling that has been placed on my life by my creator. That so much of what I knew and believed was foundationally wrong, but there were a lot of good ideas in there, and I was not raised religious. I had a mother who was incredibly spiritual, but not religious. My grandparents were Methodist, and I did attend like Bible school with them in the summers, and I did go to church with them as a child. But that wasn't part of my everyday life and upbringing. And so as a result, like I just, you know, the formal, more religious connotations of God were never really in my awareness. And, now in hindsight, I think I'm actually quite grateful for that because I don't have a lot of dogma. I mean, everybody has dogma, right? Everybody has dogma around God and Jesus and the devil. Like, you can't be alive on this planet today and not have dogma programming and conditioning around those things. But I didn't have as much as, somebody who was raised in a religious organization going to church once or twice a week. And, at my phase in my journey right now, I think I actually am quite grateful for that because what it's enabling me to do is actually engage in a way that feels, well, I don't know if it's objective. It's certainly not objective, but in a way that I'm able to just stay in a constant state of curiosity and allow my experience to be results based. And the results based, the results of my experience as of late has been that when I stay connected to God, when I spend time daily in prayer, as I'm reading the Bible, which I'm doing now cover to cover, as I'm reading the different books by different pastors and I'm reading books from pastors from all different types of religious denominations. As I'm reading that, and as I'm actually, stepping into discovery of my relationship with God and with Jesus Christ, I feel happy. I feel more peace than I've ever felt in my life. I feel content. I am able to stay in the present moment for the first time in my life. I am not future tripping. I am not, you know, deeply enmeshed in regret about the past. I don't long for the future. I'm not chasing. And my seeking feels healthy instead of obsessive. So, my plan is for this season of House of Wealth to honor the original goal of House of Wealth, which is to look at wealth in all areas of our life, our spirituality and our connection with God certainly being one of those areas. I also have been on a deep physical transformation I got very, very serious in August of last year about rehabilitating my health. And as a result, have, completely stopped drinking alcohol on the 14th of August and became a carnivore on the 18th of August. And so now I'm, getting ready to come up on a year of keeping those commitments to myself. And that feels very good. And my health is completely turned around. I've lost 40 pounds. Um, and from a mental health perspective, I'm in a better place than I've ever been. I'm no longer numbing with any type of substances. I have turned into a bit of a gym rat, and I am taking a journey that I'm calling the road to 50, which is I'll turn 48 in December of this year. So it's about another 2.5 years on this road to 50. My goal being that I am in the best physical shape of my life when I hit my 50th birthday. And so physical wealth being another area of the house, that is part of my journey that I really am wanting to share with you here on the podcast. And so we will have a whole segment called Road to 50. So you'll have episodes coming out that will say, Road to 50 episode 1 that will be housed here inside the House of Wealth. So I'm excited about that and interviewing and sharing airtime with people who are on the journey alongside me, regular people just like you and me. Definitely some experts in all these different fields. I have been studying a lot and I'm really fascinated by the impact and effects long term of alcohol on the brain, and not excessive amounts of alcohol like in relation to alcoholism, but just regular alcohol use and how much that inhibits us. So I'm going to want to be sharing more about that on the podcast. I have absolutely loved my journey on the carnivore diet. I am now moving and transitioning into more of animal based, but I can't see that I will ever move away from about 80 to 85% animal based because it has made such a dramatic and radical shift in my health. So I definitely want to share and talk more about that with you on this season of House of Wealth. And, as I become more comfortable in sharing, where my faith is taking me, I definitely will share more about that. And, my views and my feelings and my standing and my viewpoints and all of that on financial wealth have changed and morphed so much. I have a bit of a feeling that I may be releasing a new money program that is more actual faith based and creation in collaboration with God. And so we'll see, what happens with that. I I do, as I said, like I'm not sure and I will take no action until I know the next right action to take, which means that you won't just see me releasing programs. You won't just see me hosting masterclasses for no reason. I've pulled back significantly, almost entirely from all of that because I feel a great responsibility to my community to only put out things that are going to serve the highest and best good of the collective. And until I know what the exact calling on my life is, until I know what the purpose is for me in this phase of my life, I'm definitely not going to be out there throwing spaghetti at walls. I've never been a fan of that. And I want to be very, very intentional in the work that I'm releasing into the world. And honestly, like I'm still navigating how I feel about things like astrology and the tarot and divination tools. And I was speaking about that earlier in the podcast. Astrology, from a predictive perspective, is interesting because history repeats itself. And astrology, in many ways, is a study of what happened the last time the stars were here in our history. And most astrologers use that history to predict what's coming. I'm also a student of Gene Keys and human design, and those modalities are much more about using astrology to help us have a deeper understanding of who we are on this planet. And those frameworks have helped me so much over the years. And I know that my ability to interpret different schools of astrology and interpret gene keys and interpret human design and combine those with the houses of the zodiac. I know that that's a gift, and I know that's a gift that I'm actually here to share. And so I'm just personally navigating what that's going to look like inside my faith, and inside my right relation with God. And so, as I figure that out, I'll be sharing it with you. I have pulled back from doing my monthly wealth forecast while I'm figuring this out. And so I won't be releasing another one of those. And the way that they are currently, I can tell you for sure. I feel like I may be releasing a new version of um, that, and whether that includes forecasting or whether that is simply how to navigate the astrological transits that are happening in our life right now, and incorporating that with human design and gene keys to help us have a deeper understanding of our personal evolution on this planet. Um, I'm not sure. So stay tuned for more to come on that. I have also stepped back from using all of my other divination tools, and I'm not quite sure how I feel about that yet. Um, and again, like for me, one of the big parts of my life is research and investigation. And so right now I'm researching and I'm investigating, and I'm researching and I'm investigating, um, you know, everything from the origins of the Bible to the books that weren't included to, the early church's relationship with the tarot and with divination tools, and, the church's relationship with astrology. I watched this incredible podcast on YouTube the other day, actually, where this gentleman was sharing that during the Protestant Reformation, they were actually considering assigning the apostles to the 12 signs of the zodiac. And it was just fascinating to see like how much astrology and Christianity have overlapped and have interwoven over the years. And that's something I'm really interested in learning more about and sharing more about, because I have to imagine that there's more people that are on this phase of their journey like me that are really genuinely curious. And, you know, I will just, maybe end this episode by saying this podcast is going to have a very different feel moving forward. I am seeking things that bring me more calm, more peace, and more contentment. And my faith is bringing me that right now. My relationship with God is bringing me that right now. My exploration of my relationship with Jesus is bringing me more of that right now. And so if you are on a similar journey, this might be a place that you want to hang out and you want to, walk along beside me and learn more about what I'm learning about. The one thing that I know about myself is that I learn best when I'm teaching. So as I learn things, it's really important for me to turn around and teach them. And so this podcast is a place and a space for me to be able to do that. And as I evaluate and look at the different the different rooms in my house of wealth, I'll be sharing about that. And, everything from business growth and expansion to spirituality and our relationship with God, to our finances, and to money, and what the relationship is with the collective, with money, to our physical health and wellness, to the actual wellness and expansion of our brain from a neurological perspective. So, welcome to a new season of House of Wealth, which is definitely coinciding with the new season of my life. I am so incredibly grateful to all of my listeners over the years. I feel like this podcast has always kind of been a bit of my personal journey, and documentation of my evolution and my growth on this planet, and navigating this thing called being human. But I think that for me, one of the things that I realize is that, since the inception of this podcast, I have been in a place where I've been living for self and I've been driven by self. And I certainly built, the Tower of Leah. I heard another mentor of mine talk about, building the Tower of Self. I definitely built the Tower of Leah. And I can tell you that it sucked there. It was, beautiful a lot of the time, aesthetically pleasing, but it was a prison. And so my real goal from this point on is to live a life that is driven by God, that is driven by selflessness, not selfishness. And I hope that that is reflected in this episode of the podcast and in future episodes of the podcast. So, as always, I love to hear from you, and I would love to hear, how you feel about this episode, what you think about this episode. Are you on a similar journey? Do you think I'm up in the night? You are always welcome to email me at podcast@theleahsteele.com. We will put the email in the show notes. I want to hear from you. If there are parts of my journey that you'd like to hear more about, I want to hear that as well. My intention is that this podcast, is a place for me to share my journey, but it's also a place where I get to come and be of service to you as my listeners. So with that, I will sign off for the day, wishing you a beautiful and blessed rest of your day, morning, or evening, whatever time it is as you are listening to the replay of this podcast. And please remember that it is your divine birthright to be wealthy in all areas of your life, and your relationship with God, and your physical health and wellness, and your spirituality, and financially. That's all part of that. And you are so worthy and so deserving of living a life of peace and contentment.
I'm gonna live.